Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a very exciting video, both for myself and I hope you guys are gonna like it too. Basically, I have no idea how this video is gonna go yet. I had this idea when I was watching It's Just Steph. She posted a kind of battle of her palettes, and it was basically comparing her ranked palettes from 2023 and 2022. No, sorry, the first half of the year of 2023 with the second half of the year of 2023, and the way she ranked them, so like the last palette versus the last palette, the first palette versus the first palette in her ranking and so on. And she just kind of compared them and battled them out and picked one palette. So I had that idea and I thought, well, I saw that idea and I thought it was amazing. I think she also was inspired with someone else. I can't remember who. If I can find out, I'll put it down below as well as Steph's channel, of course. But I didn't rank my palettes that way, so what I thought I would do instead is just do a complete random battle it out of my collection. This is going to be like my ultimate palette collection battle. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to go ahead and randomize 2 palettes for each round, and for each round I'm just going to go ahead and like talk you through the 2 different palettes. They're going to be completely random, and one of the 2 palettes are going to have to win. So that is the concept for this video. Since this is completely random, I also not going to do like all my palettes in my collection. I'm just going to go ahead and do like the ones that I randomized today. I think I might do like 5 rounds, but depending how quickly we go through them, I might do more. We'll just see how it goes. But if you do like this concept, I would love to do it again. It's going to obviously be like a kind of thing where we'll have infinite kind of different combinations of palettes since they're all randomized. Well, not infinite, but like a lot of different combinations. If you want to see this video concept again with like new randomizations or like a different palette, let me know and I'm happy to do part 2 at a different point. But that's basically the overall idea of this video. So before I ramble on for too long, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. But before I do so, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So I basically have my wheel right here. I'm gonna stick with like no repeating results, so I don't have the same palette twice in this video. But I have all my eyeshadow palettes in this wheel, and I'm just gonna go ahead and pick 2. So we're gonna start with round number 1, and palette 1 for round number 1 is gonna be Red Dragon. Okay, so Red Dragon from Odin's Eye. That's gonna be the first palette in the round, and the second one is gonna be Divine Rose 1. Okay, let me go and get those 2 palettes, show them to you, and talk you through the 2 palettes. So here we have the 2 palettes. That's upside down. We have the Red Dragon palette from Odin's Eye, which looks like this on the inside. So that is palette number 1. And then for palette number 2, we have the Divine Rose 1 palette from Pat McGrath. Let me see if I can hold these 2 up side by side. This one is going to have to be upside down so I can easily hold it. But yeah, these are the 2 palettes right here. So for battle number 1, we have these 2. Let's start with the Odin's Eye palette. This one here is like a beautiful, more neutral kind of color story with a couple of pops of colors. I always said this is like the palette that like the ultimate palette for me. It has some beautiful like multichrome, duochrome, some warm greens, which I really like, some more neutral tones. And I do really overall like this palette. Then we have the Divine Rose 1 palette, which looks like this. This is more of a cool tone neutral palette, and I don't reach for these tones that often, but it has some really, really stunning like special shades. Especially this one here is like one of my all-time favorite shades in my collection. So this is actually really difficult. None of these are like a tip-top favorite for me. So it's a little bit hard to pick. But just looking at 2 palettes, if I had to like just keep one, I was going to say this one, but if someone said to me today, like, I have to declutter one of these palettes, I probably would declutter this one just because it's more repetitive in my collection. But looking at them at overall color story, I do prefer this palette, but also this is one of my absolute favorite shades in it. This one is so hard. You know what? Oh, this is actually really difficult because I thought I made my mind up. But I think I would have to let go of the Red Dragon palette just because it is a bit more repetitive in my collection, and I don't think I could let go of this shade here because I absolutely love it. So Divine Rose wins round 1. Let's go ahead and pick some new palettes for round 2. We'll see what we get. We have Tiny Marvels. Okay, love that palette. Let's see what we get for the second palette. Elva. Okay, that's Odin's Eye Elva. Let me go pull those two palettes out and I will talk you through those two. So first up we have the Tiny Marvels palette from Sydney Grace. This was in collaboration with Mel Thompson. So that is palette number 1. Then for option number 2, I'm going to try to hold them both up again. We have the Odin's Eye Elva palette, which looks like this. So these are the two options. Both of them are like spring tone kind of palettes. This is definitely more kind of mauve, pinks, with a few more warm tones. So that is that palette. And then this one has a bit more kind of colorful shades, but they're a bit more kind of like muted, colorful shades, again for spring. And I do like this palette a lot. I lost it after this palette a long time. Same with this one, to be honest, but this one was one that lived rent-free in my head for a long time. And this is one that I also lost it after. But I do think I picked this up earlier. Like, it wasn't on my wish list for as long. But maybe that also tells me that the color story is something that I preferred. So yeah, this one has beautiful like shimmers because they're like very kind of Sydney Grace metallic, super foiled shimmers, beautiful mattes, some of the best mattes in my collection. And this one has more kind of sparkly shimmers, but they're also not as impactful. And the mattes are really nice, but overall, it's a clear winner for me, and it's going to go to the Tiny Marvels palette from Sydney Grace. I do like both these palettes, but this one I'm going to have to win. So those were palettes for the second round. For round number 3, let's pick the palettes. We have Mini Nude from Natasha Denona, and then also Nude Light Obsessions from Huda Beauty. White balance is off, but I'm going to go ahead on palettes and I will be right back. So here we have those two palettes. It's funny because both of them are more kind of mini palettes. We have the Mini Nude palette from Natasha Denona. It's a really easy everyday mini palette with like all your everyday basic shades. And then we have, I'm trying to get it up. We have my Mini Nude palette from, my Nude Light Obsession from Huda Beauty. So there we have those two palettes. This is definitely more kind of bronzy, brown, warm tone leaning, and this is definitely way pinkier. You can see the difference right there. So these are the two palettes. I recently got this one again. This is not that old in my collection. I got this like November kind of time last year, and I only played around with it for the first time in January. I do really like this palette. It's a good staple kind of everyday palette. But I do love the tones in here. This one I had for longer. You can see I have a couple of pans in it. And I just love these romantic rosier tones. So I think out of these two, just because I prefer the tones and also because there's a little bit more variety in one of the palettes, I'm going to have to go with the Nude Light Obsessions from Huda Beauty. This palette right here is really stunning and is a good, like as a basic, but I have these tones over and over in my collection. So if I had to declutter one of these two, it would easily be this one. And then this one here would stay. So Huda Beauty wins the third round. Okay, I'm having lots of fun doing this video. This is actually really nice. I definitely think I'll do a part 2 if you guys are interested, because yeah, it's really fun just comparing. It also gives a bit more insight to your preferences and stuff, but I really like you doing this video. So let's go ahead and pick the 4th round. We have At First Sight. And then for the second palette, we have Eternal Eclipse. So Colourpop, At First Sight, and then Luna Beauty, Eternal Eclipse. Let me go and get those two. So we have the palettes next. This is the At First Sight palette from Colourpop and Raw Beauty Christie. This actually very recently rolled into my product level up, level 3. So this is the palette right here. I haven't played around with it too much since then. I actually only used one of the shades since rolling it into that project. But overall, this is the palette here. It's more of a matte heavy palette with some beautiful colorful mattes and then 2 shimmers to complement. So that is the first palette. Then for the second palette, we have this one right here, which is a larger palette, but this was the Luna Beauty Eternal Eclipse palette. And this one has some more neutral mattes in the middle there, and then it has some shimmers. It does have some mattes on the top bottom row, but it's mainly shimmers on like the outside and the mattes in the middle. This is more of a kind of smokier palette, but it does have some lighter kind of neutrals as well. But these are the 2 palettes right here. So this is a palette that I'm not too sure about my collection. I always think about it as a super smoky, super blue leaning palette. And it does have those tones, but it also has some more kind of neutral shades. And the mattes in here are absolutely stunning. They're my perfect kind of tones for neutral mattes. It has some like rosier tones. It has those kind of sandy, like rich brown tones that I love as well. And there's some beautiful shimmers on the top row. So I do really like that about this palette. This palette here has some really rich kind of colorful shades. They're a little bit deeper, but they still pack a punch when it comes to like the colorfulness of them. The shimmers I'm not too fussed about in this palette, but I do really like the color story. So this is actually a little bit of a difficult one again. Initially I was thinking about like letting this one here lose and letting this one win, but now I'm looking at them, I don't know. Because I love parts about this palette a lot, and this one I feel like is a very kind of special occasion palette for me. But I do love the colorful, like the undertones of the colorful shades in this palette, so I think this one's gonna still have to win, because I just don't reach for this one as much because of the overall like theme of the palette, even though there are individual shades in here that I really like. So for this round, I'm going to give it to the Colourpop palette. So we have come to the final round. I'm going to stick with 5 rounds for this video. And again, I can do this video again. I can do more rounds as well if you want to see that in an upcoming video. I can do even 10 if you want, but I'm going to stick with 5 to use to test the waters in this video. And again, I can do more in the future if you want to see that. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the last 2 palettes that I'm going to battle out. And we're going to have Mercury Retrograde from Huda Beauty versus California Coast. Okay, let me go and get those 2 palettes. I'm going to talk you through those 2 as well. So we have the last 2 palettes. First up, we have the Huda Beauty Mercury Retro palette, which I know is a favorite with a lot of people. It's more of a kind of pastel-y, slightly colorful palette with a few more neutral tones thrown in as well. It's a beautiful kind of spring tone palette again. And then we have the California Coast palette, which is more of a neutral palette. It looks like this. It's actually funny because this one was in my product level up level 2 palette. I'm now working on the Art Forest 5 palette, but this one was the one that I worked on before. But these are the 2 palettes right here. And it's funny because I always said that I don't like this palette as much as other people do, but it's still a really, really beautiful palette, and it has some absolutely stunning shades. I really love the shade Supernova there on the bottom. It's one of my favorite kind of shades, but I do have that shade in other places too. It is a really pretty palette, and I feel like before having this one, like my California Coast as my product level up palette, I probably would have picked this one easy. But I did make some really beautiful looks with this palette, and I do love the undertones of the neutral tones in here. So it's a hard one again. If I had to let go of one of these 2 palettes today, which one would I let go of? I actually don't know. It's a hard one. Because these are like very different palettes, and I like them for different reasons. I'm looking in the viewfinder which one I prefer. I feel like the logical thing is to let go of this one, or like letting this one here win, just because it has more variety to it. You can make some more colorful looks, you can make more neutral looks. It has some really nice like sparkly shimmers that I really like, some shiftier shimmers. And I do love the tones in here, but there's also like a couple ones that I don't really love, like, you know, this shimmer here I don't really love either. Like, I don't know, these 2 are quite similar on the lid. I do love like these kind of top shades here, especially these 3, and like these deeper shades as well, beautiful. But since it's such a small palette, if I don't love all of it, it's not a perfect palette for me. And because of that reason and the variety in this palette, I'm going to have to let the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette win for the 5th and final round. So just to quickly recap the 5 winners out of those 5 rounds, we have the Divine Rose 1 palette from Pat McGrath, winner of round 1. We have the Tiny Marvels palette from Sydney Grace with Mel Thompson for round number 2. The Nude Light Obsession from Huda Beauty won round number 3. Then for round number 4, we picked my current product level up palette, which is the At First Sight with Raw Beauty Christie from Colourpop. And then, of course, the round that I just spoke about, we have the Mercury Retrograde palette from Huda Beauty, which looks like this, which is the winner of round 5. So that is going to be it for this video, you guys. Please let me know what you think of this concept, and if you want to see more kind of installments of the series, I would love to do more. It actually was really fun for me to do this video, and it's because I have no idea what to expect before starting to film. But yeah, that is going to be it for today. I really hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye, guys.